Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm going to be looking at the changes that came to Wanda and Vision with the mid-month patch, as well as redoing the tests for the Mr. Fantastic uniform, considering he got some pretty significant changes in this patch too. Similar to the Fantastic Four testing video that I did, I'll be taking these characters first into World Boss Ultimate Thanos, and then also into Giant Boss Raid. Then, after I upgrade Vision to T3, I'll show how he does versus Null, as well as Scarlet Witch too. My card stats are still the same as before. My overall damage is around 105 to 120 depending on a proc for both energy and physical. I have 13% pierce damage, and both my builds for Vision and Scarlet Witch have a CTP of Authority on them, so without the proc, the damage values and numbers should be pretty consistent throughout. Unfortunately, since I'm trying to get this video out before the discount for the uniforms end, I won't be able to test in Giant Boss Raid Galactus, as well as Alliance Conquest. That said, I have a pretty good idea of how Vision will do in Alliance Conquest based on the changes to his kit, and I can suggest some team combos later on in the timeline testing near the end of the video. But without further ado, let's get started. So the first test that I'm doing here is with Vision's old uniform on Thanos stage 40, and I'm only using Groot as a striker for the heals. Even though this older uniform is at a lower cost and also has a lower damage value on it, it still did pretty well, and I finished the stage with 12 seconds to spare. The new uniform is a big upgrade over the old one, specifically because it changes the damage accumulation from damage taken to damage dealt. This means that you no longer have to worry about sitting around to take damage in order to build up that damage buff, as well as avoiding certain skills that have iframe so you can build up that buff much quicker. That's obviously no longer the case. You can just use the third skill to get the accumulation right away, and because the fourth skill and the fifth skill can be cancelled, you can stack up that damage really quick. Speaking of cancelling, a possible rotation that you could use is 3, delay cancel, 4 cancel, 5, and then you can use the 2 and 1 for filler. I said 3 is a delay cancel in case you do it too quickly, but I'm pretty sure you can cancel it normally. Since there are so many skills that can be cancelled on top of one another so quickly, then I'm pretty sure that if you want to build him for PVE, a CTP of energy is more than likely your best bet. If you were to build him for PvP on the other hand, then a CTP of Authority or a CTP of Regen could work pretty well. A CTP of Transcendence is also another option, but because a lot of his skills have relatively short iframes, then the lack of guard break immunity might pose a problem. The reason I recommend these tankier options is because with his new uniform he has energy reflect in his kit. So ideally the longer that the character can stay alive, the more damage that they can deal as well as reflect. So with all that said, you can see how much better this new uniform is because I finished the same stage a full 2 minutes and 22 seconds faster than the previous one. Besides this, the new uniform also has all defense down that ignores immunity, which the old one does not. Although this doesn't make much difference in the World Boss Legend fights since all defense down doesn't apply, it makes a pretty significant difference in the World Boss Ultimate stages where it does apply. You can see that even with 13% pierce, the furthest that I could make it to on Proxima stage 99 was the bottom 4 bars. The new uniform, however, provides 55% all defense down, which increments by 20% each hit. That means that the all defense down max value will apply much quicker, since most other all defense down values increment by smaller amounts like say 2, 3, 5, 8%, or even sometimes 10%. That said, with this effect active, you can see that I was able to reach the same point, the bottom 4 health bars, 3 minutes faster. Then, with about a minute and 55 seconds left, I was able to finish the fight completely. To get another perspective of how much better the uniform is, I also did tests in Giant Boss Raid Master Mold. It usually isn't the best gauge to show damage done, even if you're soloing it, since a lot of different factors can alter your time, such as if you get brainwashed or have any other CC effects applied to you, as well as if the smaller sentinels kind of split up and it takes longer to finish them off. Besides that, because the blast type got a type advantage for the day, I had to use a weaker leadership than with the universal uniform to account for the difference. You can see the old uniform is still pretty good, and I finished in about 2 minutes and 40 seconds roughly. So this time around, since I didn't have that 50% type advantage, I used Nick Fury leadership instead to get the same result, and I finished the fight about 40 seconds quicker than the old uniform. So now that you've seen how much of an upgrade the new uniform provides, the only thing left to do is to take Vision to T3 and see how much further the T3 skill pushes him ahead. With the ultimate skill unlocked, the rotation now becomes 3 cancel 4 cancel 5 into 6, and then you can cancel the 6th skill after he goes up in the air and a red aura appears. Without the T3 skill, I previously finished the stage with 2 minutes and 34 seconds remaining, and with the T3 skill, I finished it with 3 minutes and 3 seconds remaining, which is about a difference of 30 seconds. Proxima, I previously completed with 1 minute and 54 seconds remaining, and with the T3 upgrade now, I completed the same thing with 3 minutes and 27 seconds remaining, which is about 1 minute and 30 seconds improvement. As I mentioned before, the all defense down makes a bigger difference here, so that's probably why you see a bigger improvement in this stage compared to Thanos, as well as the fact that there's less interruptions because of the phase changes. And then lastly, the giant boss raid run, I was able to complete almost a full minute quicker than before. To get some more data on Vision's damage increase, I also took him into stage 9 of Null with 2 supports and his own leadership, which by the way is a 20% increase to all characters now, and another 50% increase to Scarlet Witch specifically, which means she gets a total of 70% damage increase with Vision leadership. But yeah, even with no damage proc, he had enough burst potential to do the last 5 health bars of Null, and I finished the stage with 54 seconds to spare. If you ask me, the T3 and the uniform both provide a great upgrade overall. Moving on to Scarlet Witch, I initially took her into Ebony Maw stage 99 with just Groot as the striker, and I finished that with her old uniform in about 60 seconds. With her newest uniform, it took me an additional minute to complete the same thing. Now you might be wondering, why would I get this uniform if it's already worse than the previous one? Well, that's only really the case for this Ebony Maw fight, and you'll see why in a second here. So for the old uniform's 4th skill, it previously provided 5 seconds of mind control and was on a 13-second cooldown. On the newest uniform, this has been changed to a 15-second cooldown, and the mind control has been reduced to 2 seconds instead. So based off this, the reason that the old uniform does so much better for Ebony Maw is because he's infamous for being very elusive. And by using the 4th skill, you can essentially keep him permanently locked down and keep him from going into his iframe skills and avoiding your damage. All you basically have to do is just keep using the 4th skill instantly when it's off cooldown, and you'll keep him locked in place for the most part. In addition to this, it might be a bit harder to use this character on World Boss Ultimate stages that require all defense down, because the all defense down that was on the 4th skill is now removed, but it's also present on the 3rd skill like before. So with a new uniform, you're more reliant on using your 3rd skill in order to get that all defense down stacked up, as opposed to using the 4th skill and the 3rd skill together. But that shouldn't be too much of an issue considering that they've increased the base damage on the majority of her main skills, so that's her 2nd, 4th, and 5th, even though the cooldown is higher on each of those. You can also see that even though the cooldown is higher, the increase to the ultimate gauge is proportional to the cooldown of the skills. So you can see that with the old uniform, the ultimate meter goes up by about 13% with the 4th skill, 19% for the 5th skill, and 4% for the 2nd skill. With the newest uniform, the 5th skill not only increases the ultimate meter by 35% as opposed to the previous 19%, but it also increases the hit count by around 15. The 4th skill increases the ultimate meter by 15% instead of 13%, and lastly, the 2nd skill increases the meter by 10% instead of 4%. Even though it does have less hits on that skill, it does add the accumulation, which makes a big difference. And that big difference can be seen in World Boss Legend or other modes that require higher base damage and are less reliant on all defense down. So obviously for this next test, I took Scarlet Witch into stage 9 of Null using her own leadership and 2 supports. With the old uniform, I unfortunately wasn't able to complete the stage and only got to the last 6 bars before time ran out. Before I show the result for the newest uniform, if you're wondering what a potential skill rotation looks like, you'd want to start off with your second skill now that it has the damage accumulation for damage dealt on it, and then quickly go into your fourth skill, cancel that into your fifth skill, and then you can cancel that into your third skill and let that play out. When your ultimate skill is active, you can use your second skill to start off and then cancel that into your ultimate skill. Then when you see the 2 boulders come up, you can cancel that skill into your fourth, and then fifth, and then into your third skill like before. Alternatively, if you wanted to build up that damage quicker on the ultimate skill, you could do 2 cancel 4 cancel 5 and then do your ultimate skill, and then cancel after the 2 boulders show up into your third skill. However, like I covered before, if you were to do this, then you'll lose a lot of that percentage gained from using the 4th and 5th skill that would have gone into your next ultimate. Also, because the cooldowns are kind of long, you might have to improvise this rotation a little bit by using the 4th and 5th maybe before the 2nd sometimes. For potential CTPs for a PVE centered build, you could go for a CTP of Judgment or a CTP of Rage. I'm pretty sure either of those options are most ideal, considering that you need to delay cancel the ultimate skill in order to get the most out of it. If you were to go for a PvP build, she functions pretty similar to Vision because she has that reflect on her third skill, so building her a bit tankier is probably your best bet. So that means a CTP of Authority, a Regen, or a Transcendence could all work. You could also use Patience, but I don't really recommend it since you can make up the dodge from the uniform options now as well as card crafting. With all that said, I reached the same 6 health bars almost a full minute ahead with this uniform, and then was able to complete the fight with about 30 seconds left over. Similar to Vision, I also took Scarlet Witch into Giant Boss Raid Master Mold and completed the fight in a minute and 20 seconds. Unfortunately, because the fight was so quick, it didn't really give me any very meaningful results, but regardless, I was still able to burst down the boss 15 seconds faster with this uniform. Also wanted to say a special thanks to all the people that allowed me to do the solo runs. There's too many to name, but you know who you are. Before I go into the timeline tests for Scarlet Witch and Vision, I also wanted to take a look at how much better Mr. Fantastic got with the changes in the mid-month patch for his latest uniform. So matching the tests that I did in one of my previous videos, for Proxima Stage 99, I completed the fight in about a minute. Before the update, it took me an additional 20 seconds to do the same thing. In another test where I use Weapon Hex to take advantage of the all defense down mechanic, I completed the fight in about 30 seconds. Before this update, the same thing took me 25 seconds longer to do. Based on these results, the changes might seem a bit trivial, but like you saw with the giant boss raid for Scarlet Witch, because the fights are so quick, it doesn't really reveal how much better the character got from these changes. In order to do that, you need much longer fights like the World Boss Legend ones, which is exactly why I'm showing that last. So again, based on the tests I did before this patch, I completed Null Stage 9 with a minute and 46 seconds remaining. With the newest patch, however, I was able to finish the fight with 3 minutes and 3 seconds remaining. That's almost a whole minute and 20-second improvement from the previous result. If the uniform was only considered a side grade before, it's definitely considered an upgrade now. The last thing I'm looking at here is the potential that Vision has with his new uniform for PvP content. If I recall correctly, Vision is the only other character besides Destroyer that has passive energy reflect that isn't activated by a skill. This means that by just standing around and having a tanky build, he can literally take down any of the top energy-based meta characters. Although this might not be enough to push him to the top of the timeline meta, it definitely makes him a really good character for Alliance Conquest. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to provide any testing on that given the time frame for the video's release. But considering that Vision can take out both lives for Silver Surfer, Sentry, and Jean on full auto, he should be pretty good in that mode. Also, if you were thinking that that was a fluke and that I got lucky in the fight, here's the same test again to show you his consistency. Besides having that reflect in his kit, I also noticed that his 4th skill hits pretty hard and might actually hit harder than his 5th skill. In addition to that, the skill is relatively quick, which provides good burst damage and can help take out characters that are tricky to eliminate because they have good recovery or long iframes. The other nice thing with this uniform is that the majority of the skills still have lingering effects if the skill is interrupted. So if the enemy knocks Vision out of any of those skills, they should still be able to take full damage if their iframes aren't very long. The added benefit to this is that Vision can stack multiple skills on top of one another, which not only fills up his ultimate quicker, but increases his burst potential for damage even on full auto. If you were thinking that the previous characters I tested on didn't really have that great builds, which they did, here's me using Vision on full auto again to take down my Sentry, which is a top 5 build with a brilliant regen CTP. Considering you only have 3 character spots for timeline, Vision might not be at the top of your list, but for a relatively easy character to build and with a very minimum basic build, he can do a lot of work and can be a solid choice for a free to play option. If you were to use Vision in Alliance Conquest, he's a good option for protecting your team against energy based damage. So that means potential good options would be mixing him in with the defenders, such as with Luke and Daredevil, or even with Jessica Jones and Iron Fist. Alternatively, you could put him on a team with Hulk, since most often players will use blast types for the type advantage, and since blast types are typically energy based, then Vision will reflect that damage back to them. If you want to push the reflect aspect to the limit and go for a more offensive based team, you can also pair him with Silver Surfer, Dormammu, Scarlet Witch, and possibly even Destroyer. If you already have teams for these characters because they are meta, then you can also try her out with Rogue since she has physical reflect. The last test that I'm doing here is with Scarlet Witch to show what she can do with her newest uniform. In terms of PvP, she really didn't change that much and performs largely the same as she did before. One thing to note is that the 5th skill does have 7 seconds of invincible on it now, so unless the enemy team has penetration in their kit, they're going to have a tough time taking her down. In addition to this, because the 4th and 5th skill are on a higher cooldown, then she'll naturally gravitate to using her 3rd skill more often because it is on the lower cooldown. This means that she should theoretically use her 3rd skill more often, meaning that she'll more consistently provide that reflect damage from the 3rd skill. So as you can see, she doesn't have any trouble taking out the metas that I showed in the Vision test either. So that pretty much wraps up this video. I thought that Vision got a great upgrade both with his uniform and his T3, and the buffs to Mr. Fantastic actually made him worthy of his name, and made the new uniform probably worth getting if you want the upgrade. The Scarlet Witch uniform isn't as clear cut since yes, it did get an improvement, but even with the newest uniform, she doesn't seem to excel in PvE or PvP compared to some of the other characters that aren't even native tier 2. At this point, I think it'd be better for the devs to release a uniform for both PvE and PvP so that the players can pick which one they want. In this case, the character can excel in either of those modes, which should be the case for her cost. Anyways, if you liked the video, then let me know by pressing the thumbs up. If you want to watch more videos like this, then maybe consider subscribing. If you think these changes are good or bad, or maybe not enough, then please let me know in the comments below. I'm interested to know what you think. As always, thanks for your time and watching, but the video is now over.